Attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi there, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for joining us for this week's first session with Michael Bangestania. As always, before we do anything, I would like to ask if you can just let me know that you can hear me okay, loud and clear by raising your hand in the air. Okay, super. Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. Again, if you're on an iPad or on some form of mobile device, don't freak out that you can't raise your hand. It's unfortunately not possible to do that yet on those devices, but it's okay. Your fellow coaches have let us know that they can hear you. If, however, you can't hear me, then it was probably something wrong with your individual device. Now, as always, I'd love you to please post your feedback and comments and questions on the Facebook wall. If you have any in-session questions, please use the box on the right-hand side, your control panel. Michael is going to be stopping probably halfway through, so please ask questions. If anything comes up and you want some more clarity over, you would like some more details around that, a better explanation, however it be, Michael is very, very good at articulating himself, so he'll be able to answer those questions easily. Now,
Easily.
easily he's there. He
So
listens.
easy, yeah. That's certainly a
Anyhow,
standard that, Ben, I'm probably going to fail dismally at, but that's good. Let's keep rolling with it.
and if he does, you can just put your hand up and say, "Hey, get this
Yeah,
speaker off the
he's
stage.
rubbish.
He's
Get him
rubbish."
off, he's rubbish.
Unfortunately, you can't throw eggs at him. Okay, so here's the thing. Today we have Michael Bangestania. Now, Michael, as you can tell from his banter and the while I'm trying to give his introduction, was banned from high school reunion for the balloon incident, which Michael's not going to talk about today, but he's going to promise me he will tell me over a beer when I visit him in Toronto. And he was actually sued by one of his law school lecturers for defamation, giving himself a concussion digging a hole. He gave himself a concussion digging a hole as a labourer. He was fired on his first shift as a garage attendant and has held a number of jobs where he had little or no impact. Luckily, there's also been some
Hooray!
upside. Hooray! Luckily, there has been some upside. He's the author of a number of successful books, including the bestsellers End Malaria, which raised hundreds of thousands of dollars for Malaria No More, and also Do More Great Work, which is the Stop the Busy Work and Start the Work That Matters, which I've actually read that myself, and it's a fantastic book. He's
And
also
actually, Ben, let me interrupt. Because just actually, I know there's a bunch of people from the ICF on the call, and one of the reasons the End Malaria book did well, and we raised $400,000 or close to it for for End Malaria, is that the ICF threw some support behind it and promoted it out to the various coaches. So thank you to ICF and thank you to the coaches who bought that book as well. I appreciate it.
rock and roll. Awesome, thank you for that. Now, Michael is the founder and senior partner of Box of Crayons. And he was also the first Canadian Coach of the Year and also a Rhodes Scholar. Um, a book which many of you have read, which is Getting Things Done by David Allen. David Allen says of Michael, if I had to pick a person to have dinner with when I needed to be prodded and challenged and inspired to think about the things I really am committed to think about for myself and what I'm doing, I'd pick Michael Bangestania. Has an ability to shake our tree and make us more conscious and responsible about what we know but aren't willing to admit we know yet. Now, we had Michael speak last year, and after his session, it received such fantastic feedback that I begged him to come back and present another session this year. And he kindly said yes. So, without further ado, I'd like to hand over to my very good friend, Michael Bangestania. Over to you, Michael.
Perfect. Brilliant. And Ben, I'm just checking. Have you got my slides now up on the screen? You can see those okay? Ben, I just want to
I
check you got my
sorry,
slides up
sorry, sorry.
okay?
I just muted myself, and the answer is no.
Oh,
I'm going to just quickly do that one thing. That was the one thing we forgot to do. First time
there
I.
we go.
There we go. Okay, guys, can you just raise your hands
Perfect.
when you can see the slides? Okay, you can see the slides. Okay, cool. Everyone can see the
Good.
slides. We're good to go. Over to you, Michael.
Love it. Thank you, Ben. That's a great introduction. The sixth unspeakable truth about this session was I was hoping Ben would take the first 50 minutes of the hour to introduce me, but apparently not. So we're good to go. You heard Ben request you put comments or questions or whatever on the Facebook page, which I absolutely agree with. If you're a Twitter person, there's my handle, box of crayons there, and the hash sign is #WBECS. So if you want to Twitter it up, that's awesome as well. So the 5 unspeakable truths about coaching. This is going to be juicy, and I think it's going to be useful, and I think it's going to be provocative as well. So hold on tight. But before we get into those 5 unspeakable truths, here we go. I want you to see just how good looking I truly am. Actually, that's a couple of years old, that photo now. I've got grayer hair now, and if it's possible, I'm even better looking now. But there we go. That's me. Just so you got a face to a name. And here we go. We're off to a useful webinar. Now, this is coaching, right? We're talking about coaching, and you probably already know the irony of having people being experts in a conference about coaching. You know, really, as coaches, we should just be kind of asking provocative questions and trying to generate content and discussion about that. But I know we've got hundreds of people on this webinar, so it's going to be hard to have an intimate conversation. There will be good chances for you to type your questions, and I'll answer them. But I do want to start with a question. It's a good question. It's actually one that you might want to use in your own coaching practices, and it is this. Knowing that we're about to spend an hour together, how distracted do you plan to be? How distracted do you plan to be? Or actually, probably a better way of putting it is, how focused do you plan to be during this webinar? I ask this at the start of all my webinars, and you'll see why. I want you to give yourself a score between 1 and 7. 1 is low, 7 is high. So 1 means I plan to be completely distracted during this webinar. I've got my email up, I've got my gadget by my side, I've got a horde of children running in and out of my home office, or a horde of people I manage running in and out of my work office, and I've done everything I can to ensure that Michael's dulcet tones and Ben's Milton Keynes accent are basically just background noise while I get some other stuff done. That's a 1. 7, on the other hand, is that you bring full focus to this call. You've done all you can to remove distractions. You've shut down screens, you've closed doors, you've turned off music, you've cleared your desk. 7 is, I've done all I can to be fully focused, completely not distracted during this conversation. And again, I don't mind what number you give yourself. That's entirely up to you. But I would like, whatever number you've given yourself, I'd just like you to make any tweaks you'd like to make to your environment so you can show up exactly the way you want to show up in this conversation with me. I think it's going to be fun. I'm sure it's going to be useful. But I want you to bring the focus that you want and you need so that you're here with me and your environment is set up in just the way you want it. So we're talking about the 5 unspeakable truths about coaching, and I'll tell you why. And I know this is going to be a bit provocative. Some of you may get a little bit wound up by this and are kind of apologizing ahead, but not really. I'm just saying this may happen, and that's the way I'm going to roll on this webinar. I love coaching. You know, my business makes money by teaching people, managers in particular in big organizations, how to coach. And I have a bugbear about coaching, because I think when I go and talk to people about coaching, sometimes this is the impression people have about what coaching is, right? It's this kind of Disney-esque, pastel-colored, huggy, appreciative, no, I appreciate you, no, I appreciate you, no, I appreciate you type of conversation, where it's all a bit too sweet and saccharine and cloying and about stepping into the light. And here's what you need to know. I am not saying that there's no place for focusing on what works and focusing on what's positive and focusing on really the gold, because there absolutely is. You know, when I talk about change management and I work with organizations, I'm often proclaiming and getting people to think about disciplines such as appreciative inquiry, which some of you will know about, or positive deviance, which is in some ways a variation of appreciative inquiry, where the whole point is, rather than focusing on what's broken, let us focus on what's working and find ways to amplify and teach around that. So I'm really clear that there's some very good, very positive, very powerful ways of working with what's right and what's good and what's working. And I know this, that is not the whole story. And if, as coaches, we keep pretending that is the whole story, we do our clients and we do ourselves a disservice. Now, I'm influenced here by the work of Jung. And Carl Jung, I mean, I can't claim to have read a great deal of Carl Jung, but I've read the edited highlights, and I've pulled out some probably great quotes, maybe out of context, but I think they ring true. And one of the quotes from Carl Jung that truly kind of has an impact for me is this, that the gold is in the dark. The gold is in the dark. Isn't it a wonderful statement? You know, so often we're focused on in the light, and there's stuff to be seen there as well, but the gold is in the dark. I mean, just think what that might mean for you and for your clients. And in fact, I bet that as the coaches that you are, being good, focused, talented coaches, actually, for your clients, you're constantly helping them look at what's in the dark and helping them to go, how do we use this? Not as a way of thinking that you are broken or that you're defective or that, you know, I was trained at CTI and the Coaches Training Institute, and the CTI call to action is, you know, our clients are creative, resourceful, and whole, and I believe that. And I think there's stuff to be looked at in the dark. But this is actually not about our clients. You know, we give those a lot of our time and our attention. And I'm sure with many of the other talkers and speakers on this great conference that Ben has put together, you know, there's a lot of focus on how do you best serve and work with your clients. That's great. But this is actually about you. You know, how do we look at what's in our own dark? Because by acknowledging and working with what is our own dark, and in particular, what's our relationship with our clients and our relationship to coaching, what I think this can do is actually strengthen and actually make more solid and more grounded how we show up as coaches, and make it more likely that we can be present and focused and truly serving the people that we work with. So there's that kind of lead up to it. We're going to get into these 5 unspeakable truths about coaching, and I'm just going to say this, they come with a health warning. I am going to be stating these boldly and provocatively. If you're a Spinal Tap fan, I'm taking these to 11 on the scale of 1 to 10, right? Because when you need to just go one more, you need to take it to 11. So that's what I want to do. Not all of these are going to land for you. Not all of these are going to feel true for you. But I want you to sit with them and go, where is the value in this statement? Where is the value in this provocation? And is there anything I can extract from that? So just to kind of say, it comes with a health warning. I'm trying to set things up for you. Ben, Ben, are you there? I just want to check in with you. Does this all seem to make sense so far?
It's all making perfect sense, Michael. Thank you so much.
Do you think I've given people enough warnings that I'm going to be provocative and perhaps controversial?
I'm a little bit scared, to be honest with you. I'm holding my finger over your mute button just in case you start saying
Well,
things.
I'll be completely transparent about this. Probably 4 or 5 years ago, I gave a version of this talk at the ICF North American International Conference, and people either loved it or hated it. There were people on the ICF board at the time who really didn't love it, and it was all a bit of a tempest in a teacup as a result of that. And I realized that in terms of taking responsibility for that, I did a poor job at setting this up to be explain why I was being provocative and why I wanted to kind of stir things up a little bit. And so that's why I'm trying to give you all these warnings up front so people know what's coming at them. I want to share number 1. Okay, here's the number 1 unspeakable truth about coaching. I'm going to say this. I don't want to fix you. This is you thinking about your clients. I don't actually want you to improve. I don't actually want you to get better. Now, you know, the slightly snarky way of saying this is, you know, codependency is at the heart of my business model. If I have people who never feel that they're getting fixed, never getting better, never really making the improvements that they want, they're going to be my clients for a year, for 2 years, for 5 years. That's an awesome business model. That's recurring revenue. So let me check in with those people listening to this. You know, where does this land for you? Where does it land in your body? Do you get a hit to this? Do you get a reaction to this? Can you see the truth at all in any of the relationships with your clients? Or does this feel like it's just not real, not true, doesn't really land for you at all? I'm curious to know how the impact this has, noticing that. And I mean, I have to tell you, I think somatic coaching, this sense of actually getting a sense of in your body how things land, such a powerful source of wisdom. I, quite frankly, am pretty lousy at it. It's something I'm working on myself at the moment. I'm a kind of heady guy. Learning how these statements land in your body can be a very powerful tool for you to bring to your clients, to teach your clients. Where's the impact for you? How does that land for you? So here's why I think this is dangerous, and why I think it might be a pattern that plays out, why it might be an unspeakable truth. And for those of you who were with me for the pre-conference call, you would have heard me talk a little bit about the drama triangle. There it is. It comes from the work of Stephen Karpman. Dr. Stephen Karpman, kind of what he did is he took some of the key dynamics from transactional analysis. If you don't know TA, it's the psychotherapy model that gives us parent-child and adult-child, that kind of language. Language, I think, can be useful, and certainly the models can be intriguing, but sometimes it's hard to translate that into make this useful, make this practical for me. So here's what Karpman says. He says, look, in any dysfunctional relationship, and I'm going to say this, I think that often our relationships with our clients are slightly dysfunctional. 3 roles get played out. One role, the lead role in some ways, is the victim. And you can guess what the victim looks like. It's like, oh, my life is so hard. Oh, it's so difficult. Oh, they did this to me. Oh, they did that to me. Now, there's advantages to playing the victim role. The advantages are you feel like you have no responsibility. You feel that other people have to sort this out. Other people do sort this out. And of course, you attract people who are trying to help you all the time. The disadvantage, of course, of playing the victim role is that you feel stuck, right? You feel like you can't shift anything. You feel disempowered. So that's the victim role. The persecutor role, that's the P. V is for victim, P is for persecutor. This is the finger waggler. You know, you're no good, you're lousy. I'm fine, but I'm surrounded by idiots around here. You guys are ridiculous. It's amazing I can get anything done. If anything gets done around here, it's due to me. If anything gets screwed up around here, it's due to you. So the persecutor, shows up as the bully or the micromanager or the slightly passive-aggressive piece around that. Advantages to playing the persecutor? Of course, there are plenty. You feel better than anybody else. You feel morally superior. Disadvantage? Nobody likes you. Who likes a persecutor? Who likes a bully? Who likes a micromanager? Certainly not me. And the other cost is that you end up taking responsibility for other people's work, which means you're burdened. But of course, in some ways, the persecutor creates the victim. Other ways, the victim creates the persecutor. It's an interesting twist. Then there's the third role, and this might be really interesting for the coaches listening in. It's the rescuer role. That's what the R stands for, rescuer. And the rescuer is, let me jump in. Let me fix this. Let me solve this. Let me take this on. Let me sort this out. I'll take this on. I'll save the day. And you know why you want to play the rescuer. You feel good. You feel morally superior. You feel like you're saving the world. You feel like you're a bit of a martyr because nobody truly appreciates how hard you're working and how much you're giving up and how you're cutting up. You're kind of bleeding into the ground in service of the people you're trying to rescue. So there's some real advantages to playing the rescuer, but there are some disadvantages as well. Everybody gets irritated by you because you keep butting in and trying to fix things. And in fact, and this is a real price, that in many ways what you're doing is you're perpetuating this drama triangle. Some might say the victim creates the rescuer, but the more provocative way of thinking is that the rescuer creates the victim. Ben, did that make sense to you as I was explaining that?
It did, yes. Makes perfect sense,
I know
Michael.
Ben's on mute. So
I am. I'm here. So if I keep
What
jumping in
Ben's
now,
doing is he's nodding his head thoroughly.
can you hear me?
So I
Maybe.
just wanted to check in with you, Ben. Did that drama triangle as a really quick explanation make sense?
It was a perfect triangle, and it fed on from the last session as well nicely.
Yeah, I think what Ben's saying there is it led on from the pre-conference talk as well. So absolutely, I wanted to just touch on that again. I know many of you didn't manage to make the pre-conference conversation. So you can guess why I'm showing you this drama triangle in the context of the first provocative truth, which is I don't want to fix you. Because I think what I observe in my own coaching, and I'm going to guess it shows up in many of your coaching as well, is that it's very easy to slip into the drama triangle pattern. And whilst we will play all of these roles in the moment of a drama triangle, let's just test this out. I want you to think of your clients. I want you to think of the most irritating client right now, the one that's kind of winding you up just a little bit. And do you notice that in an instant, you move to persecutor, like, so frustrating. And you move to victim. What can I do? I keep trying to make this work. It's so hard. They don't get my advice. They don't get my questions. They don't do what they're supposed to do. And then there's the rescue, which is I'll keep trying harder. I'll keep jumping in. I'll work even harder as a coach to sort this out and fix this. So I suspect that often in our coaching relationships, there's a fundamental pattern that shows up, which is coaches playing the rescuer and our clients playing the victim. And I think this piece around, I don't want to fix you, is an embodiment or a symptom of that dynamic. So how do you break out of this? Well, it's not something that we can kind of cover in a huge amount of depth, but the coaching question that is if there's one question that unlocks the drama triangle, that breaks the dynamic for a while until you slip back into it, because the bad news is you spend your life slipping back into the drama triangle until you get out of it, and then you fall back again. But the question that lies at the heart of this is, what do you want? Whether you're the victim, whether you're the persecutor, whether you're the rescuer, whatever role you're playing, asking that of the other person and asking that of yourself is the fundamental question that can really kind of get you out of the drama triangle for a while. If we go back to the language of TA, transactional analysis, parent-child, and we say to ourselves, our goal with our clients is to build an adult-to-adult relationship, then here's one definition of an adult-to-adult relationship. Ask for what you want, knowing that the answer may be no. Ask for what you want, knowing that the answer may be no. Very powerful insight about adult-to-adult relationships. And I think in the context of I don't want to fix you, here's the question that I ask with my clients, and seems to be one way of trying to manage this. What's done? What does completed look like? What is good enough? I will say to my clients when we're setting it up, when we're doing what I would call the social contracting. The social contracting is not the what are we going to work on, but the how are we going to work. I will say to them that I've got two goals in terms of the outcome of this relationship. Either you fire me or I become redundant. And my goal is to get there as fast as possible. Fire me or become redundant. I want to get there as fast as I can. So I am constantly checking in with my clients. Are we done yet? Is this sufficient? Should we stop here, or is there more work to be done? What do you think? Let me tell you what I think. Now let's make an agreement. Do we go forward or do we pull back? That's the first of the provocative truths of our coaching. Ben, I'm wondering, have we got any questions that have shown up in the chat piece yet, or should I keep going on to the second one?
I'm going to take. There's quite a few questions actually. You're definitely stirring up the audience, which is great. Okay, so it's one of the questions. Isn't this the dilemma of someone who wants to be a therapist versus being a coach? Does the speaker, that's you, Mike, by the way,
Yeah.
see a difference between a therapist and a coach?
Well, there's my guess is that many of the coaching schools deal with this, and the classic answer is, therapists go, "Oh, you're broken, and I'm going to fix you. I'm going to go back in time. I'm going to look at how you got your wound or your scar, and we'll solve that, and then we'll move forward from there." Whereas coaching tends to work from the here and now and project into the future on the assumption that you are whole, creative, and resourceful, to use a CTI piece. Whenever I've heard coaches explain the difference between coaching and therapy like that, I've always felt it was a little self-serving and a little ignorant about what the full range of therapy might be. I, in fact, inspired by a book which I love called Dan Siegel's Mindsight, actually went to my first ever therapy session, like literally 3 days ago. So before, it's always been theory. And I have to tell you, in this conversation with this therapist, we worked on the same basis, that I'm actually resourceful, creative, and whole, and we're looking to shift some patterns. And so that's a kind of half-assed answer, I appreciate, but I think the differences between therapy and coaching are subtle, but my guess is that most therapists have a deeper ability to probe deeper and break deeper patterns than coaching often is able to do. Ben, give me another question.
Okay. How does this stack up with having an outcome based on contract with a client? If both parties agree to what the outcome should be, how does I do not want to fix you stand up?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I mean, I think if you have an outcome based conversation, that's fantastic. I think that's a solid piece of social contracting. And it could be in that case, I don't want to fix you or I don't want to fix the situation, may not be as true or resonant for you and that client. I know that this is true for me though. I've had plenty of contracts on paper which say one thing, and then I have a pattern of behavior that says another thing. So to me, the question is going, how strongly and how well are you aligned with what you're saying in the contractual agreement and actually how you manage the relationship going forward. And of course, I'm not saying, I mean, I am saying that I'm trying to be provocative. So in some ways I'm going, this is a question worth asking for all your coaching relationships. My guess is it's not true for some of them, and it is true for some others. And that's the power of this question. And for some of you, it's like, you know what, this is crazy talk. Get me to the second provocative truth, because quite frankly, the first provocative truth wasn't provocative and it wasn't true. And that's fine. I'm cool with that. So let's get to that second provocative truth. And here it is. There it is, the blown out match. My coaching doesn't work. So how does that land with you? You know, do you get that little hit of, "Who? I'm trying to avoid that. I'm trying not to admit up to that. I'm trying not to look too hard at that," or does this not really land for you? It certainly lands for me. There are certainly times I've been working with clients where I've gone, I've got a theory, I'm trying to test something out, I'm pursuing a line of questioning or sharing a tool or a model, and it's all a bit meh, you know? And part of me is going, well, you know, meh, it's kind of good enough. I'm just trying to get to the end of my 45-minute conversation here, and we'll just see where we can take it. Um, Here's what I would say. Um, I would say this: if you think this isn't true, my coaching doesn't work, my guess is you're just not trying hard enough. I would suggest that part of your obligation as a coach is to push yourself and to push your client. And part of what that means is stepping outside the safer, more predictable, more familiar, less provocative, less powerful processes that you might be, you know, defaulting to and using, and actually going, right, what's the big leap here? What's the thing that if I tried it out could have the greatest risk and maybe the greatest reward? So here what I'm trying to do is I'm actually trying to get you to focus on what's the stuff that maybe not having the impact that it could be, and how might you add the most power as a coach. So I've got a couple of things to say. Well, Ben, actually, let me check in with you. I don't know how much coaching, Ben, you actually do, but I'm curious to know how if at all, does this land with you?
Well, I don't really coach. Most people think I'm a coach, but I'm actually not a coach. Um, I mean, I do marketing coaching to a point, I guess. I mean, I have
Right.
clients that I coach on marketing, but for me, everything I do is probably more along. I would say it's more consulting than
Yeah,
coaching.
got it.
It's very much results based, very focused on me showing exactly what to do, step by step, as opposed to
Sure.
getting them on with it themselves.
Yeah, sure. So, doesn't land so powerfully for you, but it may land with some of the other folks that are listening in. I've got two things to suggest as you think about this and to see how, if at all, it lands with you. The first is to think about this question: what's true? Because one of the things that I know is our brain, and I'm sure you've heard some people kind of connecting coaching and neuroscience. Our brain is wired to default to the negative interpretation of any situation. You can guess why that is. You know, 5 times every second at an unconscious level, our brain is going, is this a place of risk or is it a place of reward? And it assumes it is a place of risk unless the evidence is pretty strongly in favor of it being a place of reward. Because if it's a place of risk, you then go into, I'll avoid that, which means that you get to not be eaten by the saber-toothed tiger or whatever. So at a very evolutionary level, we've got this fundamental piece going, I'm trying to avoid risk, which means that just to be safe, I'll assume it is not working because that's actually a safer thing that I can withdraw from. So when we're in this moment with our client and we're like, I'm trying something out and it's not working, the first question to ask is yourself is this true? Am I making this up? Am I over-interpreting it? Am I confusing data and the judgments? And is it worth me checking in with my client at all? What if I had a conversation with my client to say, let me just check. I want to check how this is actually working for you at the moment. What's landing? Is this having any impact? What are you noticing? Actually having that conversation can be extremely powerful. So this question about, first of all, what's true, I think can be powerful. I would call this social contracting in the moment. So you're kind of connecting in the moment with your client to kind of check in about what's working. I think there's something powerful also around the social contracting piece. Again, the conversation about how will we work together. What if you ask permission of your client to say, I would like to push you. I'm trying to get fired by you or be redundant from you. So I want to push you. How far can I push you? What does being really pushed to the edge look like? If I'm going too far, how will you let me know? So setting up these conversations about what's allowed and what not allowed can be an extremely powerful way of framing a conversation and can be very freeing for you to say, you know what, I've got permission to really go for this with my clients, to really push it, to really kind of challenge them and see how that might land. And I've got permission because I've told them that not everything I do will work. This is one of the great, most liberating things you can do in conversation with your clients. Say to them up front, my goal is to serve you as best I can. I'm so keen to do that. I so want to be the coach that changes your life. But here's the thing. That means I have to push you and push myself, and not everything's going to work. So when I'm doing something that's not working, how do we want to deal with that? What will you do? What will I do? Let's get to agreement with that. So that social contracting piece can be very powerful. So I guess some key takeaways before we do a quick check-in and questions with Ben, which is, does this land for you? My coaching isn't working. Where does it land? What does it feel like? What does it look like if it does land? And if it does land, if you feel there's something there, A, what does this tell you about, are you playing it too safe? And B, what does this tell you about, are you over-interpreting what's actually going on? And C, what does this tell you about how you might set up your relationship differently with your client so that you actually have permission to take a risk and you have permission to fail in the greater service of succeeding with your client and your client's agenda? Ben, let me hand it over back to you briefly just to say, has this provoked anything in the chat boards? Are there any questions or any comments, anything you want to share with me before I move to the third provocative truth?
Okay. Lots of great feedback. But here's a question. Wow, this can feel uncomfortable and yet so true. I'm occasionally left feeling, is this really landing and working, even if a client says it's okay? What suggestions does Michael have in this situation?
So here's one of the most powerful coaching tools that I learned. And it sounds simple, but I think it's difficult, and I think it's the act of mastery, or one of the acts of coaching mastery, is what you feel or what you sense is quite likely to be what the client is feeling and sensing. So my goal when I coach, and I wish I did this all the time brilliantly, but I don't, but I do my best, is if I sense that I don't think this is really working, or I don't think this really landed, or I'm quite bored by this conversation, I will state that and I will ask a question. And what that does is it just puts it there on the table. And here's the thing. I've got to allow my client, I've got to trust my client. So might say to them, Ben, you know what? We're doing this process. I've got to tell you, my spider senses are going, this isn't as powerful or isn't as useful or isn't as provocative as I was hoping. I just want to check with you. What's your sense of how this is going? And Ben can go, you know, I'm a bit lost, or I'm a bit confused, or, you know what, I'm happy to stick with this and just see how it plays out, or no, actually this is working fine. And part of my deal with having an adult to adult relationship with my clients is I go, well, I trust you to make the call on that. because, you know, we have an agreement to ask for what we want, knowing that the answer may be no. So I'm going to trust that you're giving me the truth there, and I'm going to work from there. That's how I might deal with that. That's one person's opinion. I'm sure you'll find your own path around that. Ben, is there another question around this piece, or should I move on to the third provocative truth?
Maybe one quick question.
Yeah.
Is there a particular trigger in coaching that you found gives you the impetus to ask these powerful, challenging, or bold questions?
Yeah, that's a great question. Um, yeah, well, I'm not sure if I'm answering your question, but it is this. I want to have the cojones to properly serve my client, right? It takes courage to step back and have this level of conversation. But what I know to be true is a willingness to have this type of meta conversation, a conversation about how we're doing, not just what you want to work on, is for me a way of building a powerful, authentic relationship, which means I can better serve my clients. So it boils down to this is the way I want to show up in this world as an awesome coach. And it is a difficult conversation, and the more you do it, the easier it becomes. So I would start with, well, with these types of conversations, I would either start with, the client that is on your side, who's likely to be up for anything you give them, or the client who hates you and the relationship is almost dead and you have nothing left to lose. Either one of those, it's probably all on the upside. I'm looking forward to, Ben, I'm really looking forward to this third provocative truth, because it's probably the most provocative of all of them. So my hands have gone just a little bit sweaty as I think about this, because I'm noticing there's a slight anxiety in myself as I pull this up on the screen. And here it is. Number 3, I despise my clients. I despise my clients. I know it's provocative. I'm curious to know how it lands for people. Is there any part of that feels true? Any part of you that goes, there are times with my clients when I'm frustrated, I'm irritated, I'm contemptuous, I'm kind of trying not to show it, but part of me in my head's going, come on, really? Is that it? Is that who you are? I'm just wondering how this lands and how it's true for you. And you might be wondering why I've got these 4 beautiful horses on screen here. That's from the San Marco Basilica. And the reason is this. One of the most powerful books I know, I think it's extremely good, is by a guy called John Gottman. He's written a book called The 7 Principles for Making Marriage Work. And it's very interesting. It's basically taking often the work we do, and making it scientific. And he goes, look, I scientifically track and examine marriages. And he has basically figured out, he says, within a minute of watching a couple interact, I can tell whether their relationship is going to end in divorce or not. And it's because he talks about one of the key indicators is the ratio of positive statements or positive actions to negative statements and actions. Now, these can be subtle, they don't have to be verbal, but my memory is, and I'm slightly going from memory here, that a ratio of 7 to 1 is what you need to have a sustainable relationship. Now, he talks about the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. And the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, the 4 patterns of behavior that he say are most destructive to relationships, are criticism, contempt, defensiveness, and stonewalling. Stonewalling meaning refusing to respond. So criticism, contempt, defensiveness, and stonewalling. And what he says is that contempt is the most poisonous and the most destructive of these relationships. So this is how I want to frame this conversation about I despise my clients. When you despise your clients, when you feel that trigger, when you feel that rush, what's at risk for you is damaging this relationship, having this relationship with your clients end in divorce. So here's what I would encourage you to do. And I kind of reflected a little bit about this in the pre-conference talk. I'm coming back to Carl Jung again. And the statement from Jung here is I'd rather be whole than be good. I'd rather be whole than be good. And really what we're talking about here is getting into shadow work. Now, some of you may know shadow work. It's got a therapeutic kind of basis to it, but as I understand it, here's the key insight for me around shadow work. What triggers you in another person, what it is about them that winds you up, is stuff that is true about you that you have not yet acknowledged and fully incorporated into who you are. This is the Jungian, I'd rather be whole than good. So my question, as a way of thinking about this and kind of reflecting on this as a coach and how you work with your clients, is if my client is winding me up, if I despise my clients, to put it in its most provocative format, what does that tell me about me? What are they reflecting that is a mirror that allows me to do my own work? I'll give you a quick story about this. Some years ago, I had a boss, in the days where I had a boss that wasn't my business partner and myself in a box of crayons. And I have to tell you, he was a small-minded, money-hungry, power-grabbing, selfish, Napoleonic nightmare to work with. And, this is like 10 years ago, 12 years ago. So I've worked through a lot of this now. And here's what would happen. I mean, he wound me up when we worked together. But what he really did, which did my head in, is that even after I had left that company, even left the country, every time I would think of this person, I get this little rush. And I'd have these imagined conversations with him where I would crush him with my brilliance and I'd finally put him in his place. And what I was discovering is I was spending a lot of my time and effort and energy still working through these unworkable through conversations with this guy. Drove me crazy. Then I read a book, and some of you will know this book. It's by Debbie Ford. Unfortunately, Debbie Ford died quite recently of cancer. But she wrote a book called The Dark Side of the Light Chasers. The Dark Side of the Light Chasers. And it is, quite frankly, it's a bit Californian. So so I have to say it didn't blow my socks off, because it's just the tone of it isn't the tone of a book that I like so much. But the exercises and the processes in it, I thought, were extremely powerful and liberated me from being hooked and triggered by this guy. So as you are hooked and triggered by your clients, I despise my clients. My question for you is, what do they reflect? What are they telling you about you? Ben, what do you think? What comments, reflections from the chat board? Anything there that's useful to deal with right now?
Okay, we've got lots. Okay, what is it in the dynamics of the coach-client relationship process that would trigger this very extreme emotion, besides aspects that would touch on our darker sides?
Look, I think there are things people do that are just irritating. So, I think there's nothing more sophisticated than that, which is, this is an irritating person. But I'm tying it back to Gottman, going, there's a piece about being irritated, because this is frustrating behavior. And then there's a place being really triggered, and that's why I use the word despise, and that's why I connect it with Gottman's contempt as being the most poisonous of the relationships. And I think when you're at contempt or despise or this kind of deeper frustration, that it can tell you, it can be reflecting stuff about you. So it's just worth separating. Not is this person's behavior irritating or not, but is this triggering me or is it not triggering me? Because nowadays, I would be irritated by this person who used to be my boss, but not triggered by him. And it's different. And if I'm irritated, I can deal with it in an adult to adult way. If I'm triggered by it, I'm into the drama triangle again, and I'm probably either playing the victim, or I could be playing any of those roles: victim, persecutor, rescuer. It could push me back down around that drama triangle again. That's a great question. Is there one other one there, Ben, I could answer?
Yes, sure. What if you do not despise the client, but indeed become envious of his or her success?
Ooh, yeah. So I think that's a really great question. Really great question. So it's about, well, what does that tell me about me? Envy is it's slippery, isn't it? Right, as an emotion, because it can be very powerful to say, this spurs me to be more ambitious. This spurs me to be more focused. This spurs me to go. Is actually something that I'd like to be doing. And there's a way that can be a platform to ambition and success, and there's a way that can be a big stick to beat yourself up with. So for me, if you find yourself going, I'm envious of that client, what I would be doing is be doing some work with it, with my own coach or with my coaching client colleagues or whatever support systems you have. Because of course you do have support systems, don't you? You are getting coached, or you do have a brain trust, or you do have some form of support. And I'd be doing the work around that, going, this is interesting. I'm being triggered by this client and I'm feeling envious about what they're doing. There's work here for me to be to do. So I think that's a perfect example of uh, noticing what's happening and asking yourself the question, what does that reflect? What does that tell me about me? All right, we've got two truths left. We've got about 10-15 minutes to go, so it's all coming together nicely. Here's number 4. I need to be adored. That is, in fact, a statue of me. That's actually what I look like. Uh, I don't wear my hair like that anymore, but it's pretty accurate otherwise. And I don't wear the toga so much. So what is this about? I think this is about when you're going, look how awesome I am as a coach. And there's those moments where, I know there are moments where you're in true service to your clients and you're like, this is fantastic. And they don't even know how awesome that I am, and they don't need to know, and I don't even need to acknowledge it because I'm just truly in service. And I don't know about you, but I know there are times when I've been coaching where I'm going, gosh, for whose sake am I doing this? And I think we can go back to that drama triangle and go, if I'm in that place of going, I need to be adored, what role am I playing? And I think it can be a subtle form of playing the persecutor. Look how good I am. Look how fantastic I'm being. I'm okay. I'm actually subtly a little better than you. And that's a classic persecutor victim dynamic that might be happening there. So the question around this, and we'll skip to this fairly quickly, and I kind of mentioned it already, it's like, for whose sake are you doing what you're doing? And if you can say absolute groundedness, and groundedness is important, I'll come back to that in a second. Absolute groundedness, I'm doing this in service of my client, fabulous. And if you're doing it and you notice that your ego, your desire for success, your desire to look good, your desire to have the win is playing out, then this might be a question for you to step back and go, do I need to rethink about my approach to this? Am I truly in service of my client? Really what we're talking about here is the art of humility. Humility, being humble, they have the same origin, those two words, as the word for ground, humus, not the chickpea dip, but there's a word for kind of composting ground. And for me, there's something so powerful about understanding that being humble and having a degree of humility is closely aligned to the sense of being rooted and being grounded, because we know that once we're rooted and grounded, we've got a clarity about what we want, and from there is an extremely powerful way to truly serve our clients. But I'm going to jump to the fifth and final truth here. And, it's a bit of a trick, this one, because I've given you 4 powerful pieces. I want you to, all of you individually, I want you to think about a coaching relationship you have at the moment, which is not as good as it could be. The coaching client relationship you have at the moment, which is probably your most frustrating, least successful, most in a rut. And here's the moment I want for you, and this is number 5. I actually want you to create your own darkest truth. What's the truth about this relationship that you would own right now? What's the truth about this relationship you would own right now? And I'd encourage you to write this down. Notice where it's landing in your body. Notice how this impacts you physically. Notice the power of stating the truth about this relationship. Notice how the conflicting emotions that you may be feeling. I often are feeling some shame, some embarrassment, some sadness, some anger, and truly some joy, I think. Often there's a sense of owning this truth shows me a path to reimagine this relationship with the client so that it can be the type of coaching relationship that I want for myself and I want my clients to have with me. So that's the process I wanted to work with there. That's the fifth and final truth. What's your dark truth with your client? And just, as best we can, sit with that just for a little bit, just to go, I'm feeling that resonate. I'm really feeling that hit. Now, for folks wanting more information about me, there's the link on the screen there. But really, Ben, what I'm going to do now is in the 5 or 6 minutes we've got left, let's go to the questions and comments people have and see if there's any way I can help folks with any queries that they may have.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Michael. Okay, so what is that state which is better than PVR?
Yeah, such a great question. So I think that the state is, getting beyond the drama triangle, because behind that question is, are these my choices? I got three, and they're all equally dysfunctional, which they are. So I think there is a way of breaking out of that. A guy called David Emerald has written a book called TED, TED, with a little asterisk next to it. He calls it the empowerment dynamic, and it's a book that it's a parable book, and I don't like parable books very much. But what it does is it shows three different roles that may help you step outside the drama triangle. And the three roles that David promotes are challenger, which you can see has some kind of parallels to the persecutor role, creator, which has some parallels to the victim role. If the victim goes, I have no choices, I feel stuck, the creator goes, there are always choices and I can generate other choices. And the third role is coach, which is the parallel, the connections to the rescuer role. So you can see the difference. And the thing is, often these behaviors of these different roles are not that dissimilar. Often it's our intent that makes all the difference, and our mindfulness about stepping into the role. As an example, sometimes the way you show up as a persecutor and the way you show up as a challenger, the behavior can be the same. But if you are doing it for the sake of your client rather than as a reaction to a situation having been triggered, then it can make all the difference. Because we all know one of the most powerful things we can do as coaches is show up and provoke and push our clients. That whole, we want to get fired. So I think that can land. So David's book, the TED or the empowerment dynamic, David Emerald, certainly worth getting it. He also runs a training process on Bainbridge Island, which is just outside Seattle.
Thank you for that.
Anything else, Ben?
Okay. Adult to adult relationships is the ideal. How do you coach if the client takes on the child role?
What I wanted, Ben, what I secretly want to do with all these questions is, that's a really good question. What do you think? What are your first thoughts around how to do that? Here's what I would do. Here's why social contracting at the start of a relationship can be so powerful. Almost less because of the answers they give you, and more because it gives you permission to stop and talk about how the relationship is going. So you find yourself in them playing the child role, which means you've kind of resorted to one of the other roles as well. So that, they may be playing victim, you may be playing rescuer. And here's what I do. It's not the only answer, but it's the best answer I've got for me at the moment, is I speak about it. It's like, let me tell you the pattern that I am noticing in this relationship. This happens and this happens. And let me tell you the impact on me. I'm finding it frustrating. I'm finding I'm not able to serve you the best way. I'm finding that this is, slightly driving me crazy. One of the most powerful things you can do as a coach is speak to the relationship, the patterns that are happening in the relationship between you and your client, because dollars to donuts, what you're seeing and what you're experiencing is a microcosm of other patterns that client is showing up with other people. So if you're able to name them and speak them and look at them, it can really create some powerful breakthroughs. If you were to pick one book to read that is based around this, and Ben, I think this is a person who's actually one of our speakers in this conference, so that's going to be perfect. Mary Beth O'Neill, Executive Coaching with Backbone and Heart, a fantastic book. Even though it's one of the very early books on coaching, it's truly one of the classics. And when she has a chance to speak at this conference, because I'm sure she's one of the speakers, I'd strongly encourage you to attend her session, because she is smart as a whip. Really great stuff.
Okay.
Ben, I reckon we've got time for maybe another one or two questions. What would you point me to?
Okay. So, um, someone has asked for you to give a quick example or an experience to demonstrate the last truth.
Uh, so by the last truth, not the one where you had to pick your own truth, but uh, the one
I'm
where it's like,
I'm
I need to be awesome, I need to look good.
I'm
And
gonna put, no, no, no. I'm gonna put you on the
so,
spot. I'm gonna put you on the
all
spot,
right.
Michael, and say no. The last truth.
Oh, okay, cool. So uh, I'm going to pick a person I coach. Their initial is M. And if I was to own the dark truth about that relationship, I would say that um, there are times where there have been I should have given him feedback about his impact on me and the team, and I haven't been courageous enough to do it. Here's an even deeper truth. There have been times where I have given him feedback that have been, in part, to put him in his place and reinforce the differences in power and superiority between me and him. So actually, it kind of ties in a bunch of the things I connected to. A moment of contempt for that client, a moment of I need to look good and I need to look better for you as well. So I think that's a hard truth for me, a dark truth for me about that person that I coach. I'm blushing now.
Thank you very much for that. That's very very bold and brave of you, Michael. Um, okay. Let me go through. I have a client who is one of 7 people I'm coaching in a larger organization.
Mm.
And my fifth truth is I feel this person is not competent or committed to their job, but because of my confidentiality contract with everybody, including the boss of the business, I am stuck about what to do. My fifth truth is I
Mm.
am lying to myself, the employee, and the boss. What do I do about this?
Oh, yeah, good question. And of course, what I want to do is go. So you've already got spider senses that tell you what you need to be doing about this, and I can't guess what you need to be doing about it. But here's what I might do if I was in that situation. Um, I might consider having an honest truth about. Um, I, I'd be considering what I might reveal that would be more honest with this particular client. And what I might also consider doing is going, I don't think I'm the right person to coach this person, and I need to find another coach who might step in and do this. So I might renegotiate the contract to say, you know what, um, I just don't feel that I can show up and have the impact I want to with this particular client. And I don't need to tell you why, but it's just suffice to say, we'd be better off finding another coach to do that. And of course, the person who asked that question has already got some other solutions in their mind. And um, one of the things that you might want to do is test those solutions out with imagining how it might play out. Here's a very simple way of doing this. I would I carry masking tape with me, painter's tape. I put a strip of painter's tape down on the floor, and I imagine that that's the next, let's say, 6 months. And I declare a course of action. I'm going to excuse myself from this relationship, or I'm going to have the hard truth conversation with the client. And then I walk along this line, of this taped line, imagining time passing. Where I start is now, where the tape ends is 6 months from here, and I talk it out and I imagine what happens if it goes well, imagine what happens if it goes badly. In some ways, this is a form of somatic coaching, walking the line, where you walk, time unfolds, and you imagine and you see what's happening. You're combining scenario planning with somatic coaching and doing that exercise. It's a far more complex answer than they were looking for, so sorry for that. Ben, let's have one more question and then we'll call it a day.
Okay. Um, how difficult was it to learn how to fire clients?
Oh, look, it's like miserable. This is the miserable experience. It's one thing to know intellectually how to fire them, and secondly, it's about having the courage to fire them. And what I need when I'm trying to do that is I talk it through with my wife, who is my business partner. I talk it through with my coach, who I've worked with for 5 or 6 years. I talk it through with my brain trust, 4 or 5 other coaches we've supported each other for 5 or 6 years and used each other as a sounding board and the like. I rehearse it. I do a lot of things because it's miserable. Um, and one of the key things as coaches that we do with our clients is, what are you going to stop tolerating? I think I first heard about that concept from Thomas Leonard, who some of you will remember and know. What are you going to stop tolerating? And for me, there comes a time where I go, I'm not prepared to tolerate the mediocrity of this relationship, and the discomfort of firing them is not as is a less significant price to pay than the mediocrity of me continuing this relationship. And when I hit that moment of intolerance, that's when I get the courage to fire them.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for that, Michael, and thank you so much for a super session. I really, really
Brilliant.
appreciate it. Ladies and gentlemen, as always, I encourage you to jump onto Facebook. If you're not on Facebook, then you can tweet and you can use the hashtag WBECS. If you're not on Facebook or Twitter, then please feel free to post something in the chat box. But ideally, you will post it on Facebook. That's our hub. And I know Michael's on there. If you've got any questions that weren't answered, please jump on there, because Michael has kindly said that he will spend a bit of time on there answering any
Sure.
questions that jump up. So please jump onto facebook.com/WBECS. I believe you have that in your chat box. Let me just quickly post it again for you. There you go. I think that's gone to everyone. So yeah, please jump on there, and we're building a pretty cool community there. We have another session in, I believe, 1 hour's time, which is going to be talking about the newly formed GCMA. It's a large strategic alliance that's been formed between 3 of the biggest coaching organizations in the world. And it is going to mean quite a lot of differences. Things like definitions of coaching. What is coaching? What are the standards? What are the agreed standards in coaching? What level should we be playing at? And they're going to be talking about why this has been formed, the benefits of it, what impact it's going to have on coaches around the world. So it may well be worth joining that session. It should be a very interesting panel. We have the 3 CEOs, presidents, managing directors types of the 3 of the largest associations. So anyway, that's that session. Now, Michael, thank you so much once again for a brilliant
Pleasure.
session.
Brilliant, Ben. You're doing a great job with this conference. I'm so appreciative to be part of it. So thank you. And thanks everybody who found time today to join us. I really appreciate that as well. Great questions.
Super, guys. Okay, everyone. Well, take care. All the best, and I will look forward to you joining us for future sessions. And I'll finally say one big, huge thank you once again to Michael Bangistania for a super session. Thank you, Michael.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.